Hello everyone. We are continuing with the Sisyphean task of answering all the nearly 400 questions I received on an early video. We're gonna go really fast today. So before beginning, 3 points. First, donate to Patreon, please. Every penny makes a difference. Second, try playing this video at 2 times or 1.5 times the speed. It makes me sound like a cooler person and steals less of your time. And third point, this is not a video for receiving questions, so please don't ask questions in the comment section. I'm barely able to answer all the hundreds of questions I received on an earlier video, so this video is part of my effort to keep my word on that. Alright, let's go. Take a sip of my coffee. Just slightly gotta do number 1, slightly gotta do number 2. Blood pressure slightly elevated. Best way to work. Okay. Imam Bohan asks, do you ever think about the viability of fully democratic societies where even inside the office or factory there's full democracy and workers share that ownership? Okay. This is about socialism or like fully fledged communism maybe, and I don't know too much about these social theories, but something like this could happen depending on the nature of the work or service being produced. I mean, in an environment like a hot and rapid San Francisco startup, I think you will need some sort of leadership. But of course, it all comes down to how much of an asshole the boss is to determine how much he receives and if there's equal pay or like how steep the pay pyramid is. It all depends on the boss. Even in the fast and furious tech world, companies who have more equitable distribution of wages kind of do better. But if you're talking about a factory, I don't know. I think it all depends on how stable that society is and how stable technological development is. If you have new technological advances every 5-10 years, then the competitive environment is much more vicious and you need to drive workers harder, and there is more incentive to have administrative roles, and there would be more incentive to pay them more than the workers, even though that's a horrible prospect. So, in my humble opinion, in an ideal world where technology is frozen in the level of, let's say, 1963, well, you have the paper factory that only produces paper, and the aim of that factory is not to increase growth, but just to stay in business. So if society stays like that for 100 years or something, maybe it's more viable to have a democratic society in which ownership of the production means is shared. But then we look at even medieval history, and time and again, I think principally related to the role of defense and justice, these administrative roles crop up, like the king, the judge, the soldier elite, and these guys inevitably end up receiving bigger slices of the cake, so it's complicated. Okay, Gigi channel, what are your thoughts on the creatures and ecosystem of the Monster Hunter video games? I've seen clips from Monster Hunter. It really sounds like a great game. I mean, there's a kind of Monster Hunter-y monster design flavor, which shows us that, like, no matter what one thinks about this design, they're consistent, which means that they're good. But I have to look deeper. GG Channel asks, again, have you ever considered doing concept art for movies or other forms of media? Depends on the movie. Certainly, I won't turn away any offers. What do you think of Serena? I love it. I've expressed it in previous videos. Any updates on Snyad? Subscribe to Patreon to find out. What are your thoughts on the Godzilla Kong Monsterverse? They're rebooting that, aren't they? I think these were always better in their original incarnations. And we have these CG monster fight fests, but sooner or later that series is gonna turn into something like Transformers. Unless the producers grow a proverbial pair of balls and decide to do something really wild with the story, or something really unseen with the story, like Shin Godzilla. That was a good film. So if the entire Monsterverse kind of follows the footsteps of Shin Godzilla, maybe, I don't know. Lone Star 713 asks, what is your opinion on Among Us? I haven't played it. It's become a kind of meme where people try to see that hazmat suit creatures everywhere, and some of those memes are weirdly sexual, so I don't know. That's gotten me interested, but I haven't played the game. Marcio Mendoza asks, what do you think about shopping malls? Seriously though, I watched a video of you walking in one. That video gave me the thought of, interesting and simple. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about taking note and appreciating the simplicity in daily life. Okay, actually, in YouTube there are some great dead mall expedition channels, and they do far wilder and far better video expeditions than I do. Like, my only unique selling point is that I'm in Turkey. I visit all these unique, eclectic, quirky Turkish malls, and I have my own ability to talk my mouth off. So those all come together, and I hope you enjoy those videos. I think shopping malls are great. Truth be told, I mean, there's a difference between spending all your day in a shopping mall and then being able to just go to one place and take care of your grocery, take care of all your daily needs, shopping. I mean, it's up to you to become a shopping addict or not. So towards the end of the 1990s and early 2000s, shopping malls were needlessly maligned, like, temples of capitalist consumption. Well, guess what? Now almost all of the world, like except for the really undeveloped countries, have shopping malls, and they're really nice, healthy places, comforting places to be in. So I like shopping malls. Once again, it's up to you to become a mall rat or not. If you're not a mall rat, it's not my problem. And the note about appreciating simplicity in daily life, I mean, without getting too poetic, you don't need to go film trash bags floating in the wind and cry about them, but these little details, especially from different countries, like phenomena like shopping malls, they're universal, but every country has their little quirks about them. So if you capture that from your local environment, it's a plus to the narrative experience of the entire human race. So I appreciate everyone to make their own dead mall expedition videos. Here's my tip. Just walk and record visuals, and then you can record your audio commentary on top of that. It saves you a lot of hassle. And if you record these and share them with me, I'll promote them. That's a promise. Lance Amida, did you get approached by Netflix yet? Maybe. Honestly, no, not yet. Okay, Reed Mendez asks a lot of questions. Oh man, where to begin? Okay. 1. How do theological and occultist themes and ideologies mesh with science fiction? Does it inevitably lead to something like Prometheus in terms of plot, or science fantasy like Star Wars where science and supernatural powers coexist? I mean, even in proper like Reagan's science fiction, there's a bit of supernatural. I mean, all those Wars of the Worlds movies or stories could be compared to the final battle between Satan and his minions and God, Armageddon. Actually, if you read Revelations of St. John, it reads like a world-destroying science fiction epic. So the line between the two is just very thin, and it's mostly in terms of costume. I mean, that is to say, not actual costume, but one is decked out in gods and censers and grasshopper lions and seven-headed beasts. Other is dressed out in ray guns and hyperdrives. But I think in the best examples of each, there is little difference. It's all about the human experience to a degree. I think Prometheus was, and its following Alien Covenant film, they were like contrived efforts by Ridley Scott to come up with like sci-fi that looks occulty, but they kind of fail. Ridley Scott has great visions, and these movies, they're like symbolist painting. I mean, he wants to shoot individual scenes, and he doesn't really care about the movie as long as it connects these really strange and unsettling scenes together. So I think these movies should be chopped up into like 12 short films each, and then they're really interesting. Reed Mendez. Oh man, you got a wall of questions. Well, I promised. You think I have nothing to offer but pain. Only I know you love pain. Okay. Number 2. Do you view humanity as a solely biological organism, or do our cultures and ideas of spiritually separate us from other organisms in a meaningful way? I think all organisms need to be featured with their behaviors, and our culture is a hyper-extended form of behavior. Also, how can you be sure animals don't have culture in ways we cannot appreciate yet? I mean, more and more we're discovering things like elephants have individual names or linguistic variations. Whales have them too. So I think at least in some more quote-unquote developed animals, you will find things like cultures and myths. They just don't write about them yet. But so I think our difference is a quantitative difference rather than a qualitative one. We produce more culture and we can record it slightly more efficiently. And I mean, my view of culture and spirituality and species is that it's a sliding scale. Sometimes the sliding scale moves in a bit of a high slope, but it's a sliding scale. Number 3. When you analyze media, what do you look for and what catches your attention? Are there any types of media you resent? I think if I like something, I know it, and if I feel motivated about it, I speak about it. I never thought about it that much. Are there any types of media you resent? There are, but I have no axe to grind, but only my thoughts to burnish. So, I mean, it's not a good use of my time to rant about things. Number 4. With your growing fame, do you feel any pressure to appease the masses with your work, or will you continue to write what interests you? I will continue to write what interests me, unless someone gives me an offer I cannot refuse. I feel a little pressure to satisfy my fans on YouTube. I've got 22 subscribers. The day is 13th of Friday. Wow, 13th of August. It's a Friday, 2021. It's not a big following, but I feel responsible, so I'm answering all of your questions. So there's a kind of good kind of pressure. 5. Do you travel a lot? Is there anywhere or anything you really want to go to see? I used to travel more or less considerably nicely before COVID struck, and then my country's economy kind of took a dive, and now I'm traveling mostly inside the country, and it looks like for the next decade or 2 decades I won't be able to travel as much as I used to. I mean, there were times where my wife and I visited Australia in winter, Sicily, Italy in summer, and then in spring the Greek islands. Phew. All those days are gone like tears in the rain. I'm glad we did some traveling while we could. And let's see, anywhere or anything I really want to see? I don't know. I really want to travel the land route visit all of Eastern Turkey, Anatolia, all of Iran, then move on to places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and through China, and then end up at Vladivostok. I want to have a little car I pack with supplies, and I take unplanned short trips every couple of days, stay at a local motel or a friend's house, take photographs, look at bugs, and drive as it pleases me. If I was a billionaire, this would be my first luxury. Any interest in cryptozoology? Do you see it as a poor, sketchy zoology or the humanity's fear of unknown? I think cryptozoology, as John Conway said it, is a very long-running speculative zoology project, coined before zoology was even a thing. I think it's a very relevant cultural phenomenon and needs to be studied as such. 7. Do you have friends, family read your work for feedback or just leave it to a professional editor or publisher? It's a couple of friends online. My wife reads some of my stuff, and it's just me. I mean, I write things, I print them out, and I read them, and I always find mistakes. I want to gouge my eyes out. Lately, I've been using Grammarly. This is not an ad, by the way. Or even like when you're composing emails on Gmail, they really catch those pesky errors really well. So I really recommend using Gmail's mail composer as a quick and easy grammar correction tool. Other than that, it's just me. I found that writing on paper with a pen really saves me from embarrassing grammar errors, because when you're typing on computer, you always get distracted and like you return to a sentence 3 times and then you get mistakes like to or and or, like two like repeated phrases. So that bugs me. But it's just me. I would love to have an editor, but I don't have one. 8. Worst case of writer's block you've gotten and how you overcome hang-ups. I mean, to this date, the only time I stopped writing or painting was when some personal or family tragedy struck. I'm not a good misery writer. You know, some writers or some creators claim that tragedy influences them. I'm not one of those people. Other than that, I just go. Okay, you know what? Very early on, our country experienced a horrible earthquake and my grandmother died in it, and then we had a whole lot of like deaths in the family. It was really bad. And I think this woke me up to the value of time. So ever since that, I had just one mode. Go. Number 9. Man, you got a lot of questions, Reed Mendez. One day I should visit you. You should buy me a hamburger. Number 9. Do you think media should serve as escapism or mental stimulation? Should we think a lot about what we consume or just take it in as entertainment? I think it's my approach to food is the same. If you feel like it, do it. And there's nothing wrong with consuming quote-unquote trash media. Sometimes we need that relief. Ultimately, what media serves us is determined by the media consumer himself or herself. And like some of my best enjoyments come from listening to this really crude or awful or cheap or quote-unquote redneck songs. I really enjoy them. And I can sense it's just a sort of entrenched class mentality that leads people to dislike them. But that's why actually I open some of my podcasts with like weird rap songs like 3, 2, 1, 0. Here comes a countdown, last man a hero. What's wrong with enjoying bad rap? I could do that and also draw alien reptiles and amphibians. That's the life. Number 10. What languages do you speak and what languages do you wish I spoke? Oh, I wish I spoke them all. Really. Hebrew, Arabic, French, Chinese. There's not a language I wish I didn't know how to speak. Maybe Dutch, I don't know. Other than that, I speak English as you hear it. Turkish is my mother language. Here's a Turkish phrase. Hayattaki en hakiki mürşit ilimdir, fendir. Or, en büyük savaş cehalete karşı yapılan savaştır. I also know a little Greek. I actually took private Greek lessons, and now if I go to Greece, I can at least read the signs and find my way around. I can't sustain a conversation for long, but I could say, Mia tavela per dio adomo parakalo, a table for two, please. Or I could say, what should I say? Vlepo ena krokodilaki. I saw an agama lizard. Agama is krokodilaki in Greek, which means little crocodile, which is a really nice twist of words. I can also read the Greek alphabet. Also, finally, I know a smattering of German, but very, 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 very little. Ich kann Sprache kleine Deutsch, aber nicht so much. You can probably understand the paucity of my knowledge of the German language. Okay, that was that. Tetromint asks, what's your favorite color? It's yellow tangerine. Macintosh P, do you have any plans for future creatures? I answered this question before. Check my previous video. Martin Zabo, you have tremendous creativity. Thank you, man. Your creatures are so unique and exact. Most of your paintings tell some kind of backstory also. Thank you and thank you. My question is, do you think it is possible that these creatures are real, that they exist in some other reality, and you are somehow channeling it? I'm a super skeptic person, and I don't think about these kind of woo things, but I always had a weird feeling about your work, which I adore. Thanks. Okay, so, if I was enough of a shrewd person, if I was enough of a snake, I could say I have visions of alien worlds and have a sort of cult-like following, and I could probably take like monetary and physical advantage of my followers, because people are extremely gullible. Like, if you look at them as a whole, all those cult leaders, they make up these like extremely sketchy stories, like aliens are coming down to steal your gold or something, literally. And they have these cults of sex slaves and people donating money to them. There are people who claim they are God, like actual God, in the final Abrahamic religion. And they go to this, let's say, industrial zone where there are a lot of people who own small workshops. They make decent money, but these people are like religiously conservative. And this man, this is a true story from Turkey, man. This man says he is God himself. And somehow he gets away with like something like $5 million from all these small business owners. Unbelievable. So if I was pushed, I think I could spin my vision saying I travel to different worlds. I think human imagination is a really potent force. I think everybody, with enough determination and education could do things like this. But thank you. I just want to make my visions or make my paintings or make my creations look consistent with what I know in natural history. And of course it helps to know about like true science. But I have made so many creatures that in the far, 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 far distant future, it's like the spray and pray method. If one of them happens to resemble something that we discover, maybe I'll have the final laugh. Okay. These 1 hour marathons, they're really tiring. Internet Stranger asks, what gave you the inspiration to start writing? I read a lot of sci-fi books and history books, and I was inspired to write like them. Zerguskotus asks, in the future, will it be possible for nations to split into different species, changing their bodies differently for cultural reasons? Not in this future, because we have so much cross-cultural travel. Even in the past, I mean, human race, quote unquote, was mostly a social construct. I think human tribes are really rigid. Race is an element in those, but not always. I think, like, in pre-industrial times, people separated into more or less tribes that were determined by a mixture of ethnic factors, religious factors, quote-unquote racial factors, but it's all a mix. I mean, tribalism is the main divider of the human species. I mean, in the 19th century, there was a lot of talk about nations becoming different races. At least, like, in the super racist early 20th century years, it was like most people understood the way we understand now, like the way we are certain that global warming is real or something. Most people knew that the Asiatic race or the Oriental race nest in China was a different political and racial entity of its own, and sooner or later they imagined this race would come into conflict with the white race who ruled the Western world. But of course, that's a very crude and childish way of looking at things. I don't know, in the future, nah, not unless like there's a drastic decrease in technology and maybe some outlying island nations are separated from the rest of the world for hundreds of thousands of years, but I don't see this happening with people. Different species? No way. I mean, you could have different variations in skin tone, speech, height, susceptibility to diseases. But then, you know what? All of these people can interbreed. Aboriginals can have children with Japanese people if they wanted to. So, no different species. Arthur A-Team asks, I honestly don't know what to ask. I didn't know you had a YouTube channel. I just found out you had one because you commented on a video. Okay, thanks, man. Marco M asks, how do you feel about me pirating all of your works and not buying none cause I'm broke? Well, actually, I've got like 8 or 10 history books and you cannot pirate these books. You have to go and buy them. All Tomorrows is out there as a free project. So is Snaiad. But when I make those into books, I don't think you'll be able to pirate them all. I know All Yesterdays, the dinosaur book, is out there in pirate sites. Well, if you want, you could pirate. But of course, if you pirate, you know, at least subscribe to me on Patreon, so we get even that way. Team Up Left asks, what kind of vertebrate life could survive on a planet that had a steady state environment where the temperature across the whole planet was 45-50 Celsius year round? Celsius or Fahrenheit? Celsius, okay. So really hot world. Lots of reptiles, I guess. Also depends on the availability of water. Like if you got oceans, but it's still very hot. You had something like this in the Eocene era. It was called the hothouse Earth, where you had the famous Titanoboa. I think in that kind of a world, reptiles have an edge. If it gets really, really hot, then it's a world of very small reptiles. But reptiles all the way. Renew Infinity Train asks, where do you find your inspiration? Is it from nature? If you go to my website, www.cmcosman.com, and click the inspiration section, you could see some of my inspirations. Xenomorph Özkan asks, Selam Baba, what's your favorite movie? I got many favorite films. I think the original Blade Runner is very close to there. But there's so many good movies, man. I don't know. Kelston Hubler, long-time commenter, hello man, asks, hey Momo, on the subject of you, Conway and Nash's Cryptozoology Con, considering your rightful skepticism on so many proposed in that sphere, are there any cryptids you and others would consider to be more likely? I know Orion Pandek, blah blah blah. Sorry, my vocal cords are tired. I cannot read the whole comment out loud. Okay, he asks, Calston asks, are there any cryptids which you consider more likely? I think there are many. I think our oceans are home to at least one giant sea monster that we haven't discovered. There's the case of the famous giant Leptocephalus. Okay, so Leptocephalus is the larva of an eel. Unlike the eel, which is really long, a Leptocephalus is leaf-shaped. It's a transparent, leaf-like, bizarre larva fish. Now, usually these leptocephali are a few centimeters long. But then there's the case of Leptocephalus giganteus, which is a 1 meter long Leptocephalus larva. And this thing is real. And maybe it grows up into not a giant sea snake, but, something like a 5 meter long deep ocean eel is not out of the question. I also don't think a giant abyssal octopus is out of the question. Giant being like 8 to 10 meters long, mantle length. Orang pendek is certainly plausible. I think we draw it to extinction. Orang pendek are these small orangutan-like forest people that are reported from Borneo, if I'm not mistaken. These were the Flores people, Homo floresiensis. So there, a lot of cryptids are plausible. A lot of Australian, especially Aboriginal myths, like the bunyips, they're probably memories of bygone Australian megafaunal animals. Okay, I'll tell you an embarrassing story. One night, John Conway, Darren Naish, and I were sitting, thinking about the Cryptozoologicon. And I don't know what happened, but during those years, and particularly in that night, we were all gripped by the possibility of the Bigfoot actually being a real animal. This was just as camera traps were coming into the market. So I'm talking about mid-2000s or something. And we were all a bit drunk. So we were all like revving each other up like, oh man, if we have a camera, if we can just secure 10,000 pounds, we could go to British Columbia, set up these camera traps, and I'm sure we will catch it. This is going to be a revolution. And then the next morning we woke up, we looked at each other and we felt so embarrassed, as if we had committed some unspeakable carnal sin. We were like, let's not ever talk about the Bigfoot event. People get excited like that. I'm now convinced that the Bigfoot never existed. We would have found fossils, if anything. And camera traps, drones. That part of the world is extremely sparsely inhabited. It's an enormous area. But it's also been surveyed so much. So I don't think the Bigfoot is real. Sorry. Okay. Calston asks, also, have you guys considered all your yesterday's take on the Cryptozoologicon? Because I'm sure me and many others would love to contribute. Well, actually, we should have thought of that. Because many people have amazing ideas. Actually, one of our friends, Tim Morris, has been launching his cryptozoology and speculative evolution related projects for years. And he's really creative, really very talented. So check those out too if you can. I don't know, the Cryptozoologicon project kind of ran out of steam. But if any of you want to do your own takes on cryptid creatures, go for it. You don't need my blessing. The world will be a richer place if you do it. Wait. I'm wiping my computer screen because I'm OCD like that. Okay. Just drink a lot of water. What food or drink would you like me to consume on the next installation? I will if I can. Okay, more questions. Felipe Vasconcelos, will you make a sequel to All Tomorrows? I am rewriting All Tomorrows, so that could be a sequel. I shouldn't have answered this. Yan asks, I'm too stupid to think of a good question for you. Come on. Don't underestimate yourself. I burped. You see, I'm a burping, farting person. So I'm not a great mind. I've just been lucky. So I just want to say thank you for your fresh view and perspective on things and the academic world as a whole. Thank you so much, Yan. Thank you. T asks, what's your favorite food? I've answered this before. I will answer again. It's pasta of all sorts. I could be placed in a cube roughly 10 meters by 10 meters full of pasta, and I could eat my way through this cube. Igor asks, who will win in a fight, rhino or a hippo? Hippo wins if it's in water, rhino if it's on land, but both animals are enormous animals. And he asks, does pineapple belong on pizza? My teeth hurt just thinking about pineapple. I don't like pineapple, period. I don't like eating pineapples in any way, shape, or form. Other than that, if it's on pizza, it's no different than having cucumber on pizza. If you don't like cucumber, you don't like cucumber on pizza. Jorvis Kohn asks, hi CM, firstly, what is your favorite dinosaur? Secondly, is there an evolutionary niche we have today that hasn't been found in the fossil record but you think likely existed? I got many favorite dinosaurs. Let's leave it at that. My favorite dinosaurs are the sauropod dinosaurs because they're enormous. And I think that's kind of segs into the answer to your second question about niches that never existed. For example, parasites on sauropods, which are giant animals. Now that's a niche that we never have on Earth. Also, we know in the past there were these amazing, gigantic forests. Trees that would make redwoods look like splinters. So that was a huge niche that we don't have now. Also, when Pangaea was a thing, scientists believed the center of that continent was one giant desert. And I'm sure in that desert there were enormous salt lakes the sizes of oceans that periodically dried up and got inundated. So that's a niche we never have. I'm sure the past was far more full of things. And I think we have some niches that didn't exist in the past, such as cities or suburbia. So there. Ikke asks, any new creative projects soon? My future projects roster is one of the most closely guarded secrets in the known universe because I'm afraid of jinxing stuff. I really love your odd drawings and weird body horror type fiction. Thank you, Ikke. Also, why make such weird, trippy, surreal art? I'm asking because I love it, Ikke says. Surreal art, for me, my surreal art is my way to vent off steam. I don't have to think about realism. I just look at the paint, choose the good colors, and lay them out in the shapes that I like at that moment. And they're all improvised. A lot of them come out crap, but you'd never see them. I destroy them. Cyborgium trifluoroorganate asks, do you have any interest in hypothetical biochemistries, like trying to describe a creature that consumes some solid substance in place of oxygen? Well, I used to think a lot about these things, but I realized even if we have silicone-based life, it would kind of evolve to look like worms, or those worms would evolve to look kind of like flukes. So even though the whole biochemistry was different, those animals would somehow resemble animals we understand. A silicone-based life wouldn't look like blown glass swans without arms or necks. So there. Actually, I have a video about these somewhere deep inside this channel, so go watch it. I don't know enough about biochemistry, and I'm afraid no one does, in order to be able to make educated guesses about how that biochemistry would pan out in terms of macrofauna. Jonkers asks, are you interested in making any more videos about intelligent prehistoric life? I really enjoyed your video about lystrosaurs. Thank you. in general, I'm very interested in eusociality and other animals, and I think you have a great way of presenting it. Thanks, Jonkers. Not at the moment, but if you go to my website and go to the illustrations page, I had a old series of drawings in which I imagined all sorts of dinosaurs and dinosaur-like animals giving rise to intelligent forms. There are things like intelligent prolacartiforms or intelligent flightless pterosaurs. It was really fun. Natam asks, I don't know if I'm too late, but do you have any works you'd want to be popular as your most popular work? Yeah, of course. My most popular work at the moment is All Tomorrows. But actually, I want my history books to be more popular. I have got these, like, real, genuine history and memoir books. Like, one of them is about a Georgian psychiatrist who has lived and worked in Istanbul all his life, and his experiences with Istanbul's certain neighborhoods in the early 1900s. I want that book to be as popular as All Tomorrows. I have a 2-volume encyclopedia about urban details and sign painting from Istanbul, and these are all in English. I got other books about the Jewish community of Bodrum. I want those books to be known more. Okay. Canis Est Lupus asks, CM, I have a question on how we can call you. Is it okay to address you as Memo? Yes. CM is short for Cevdet Mehmet. Mehmet becomes Memo, like Robert becomes Bob. So there. I feel really uneasy because of that. No, don't feel uneasy. You can call me Memo. That's perfectly fine. User Null. Why do you write? For fun or for art? Why not both? If for art, then why? I don't know, I just want to have these big projects. And I want them to be a net contribution of my life to the world. Skeleturtle YT asks, do you imagine if Vorax, the name of a deleted fictional species of bird-like dinosaur from Disney's Dinosaur, that's a late 90s movie, actually predicts the discovery of an actual species of dinosaur? Okay, I know what the Vorax looks like. It looks like a oviraptor with a big predatory dinosaur's head and a crest. And I think the species they have in mind is, I think, Guanglong, or one of those crested mid-sized predatory dinosaurs. Now, the concept artist for Disney's Dinosaur was Ricardo Delgado, who's a great guy and a great artist. He has a series of comics that are called The Age of Reptiles, and they're great. And I think he may have had access to early skeletal reconstructions of these animals before they were properly published. Or, he just may have made them up, and it's not that hard to make up a crested dinosaur. So it was not a prediction, but if you mess around with anatomy, you inevitably do make predictions. Especially the more you know about evolution, the healthier these predictions become. Okay. Umurhan 1999 asks, how would you connect a speculative evolution to narrative fiction? How would you manage both aspects in, say, a graphic sci-fi novel? I'm actually really shit at connecting speculative evolution to narrative fiction. I think speculative evolution is shows its best potential on its own. Just have descriptions of worlds and creatures and time epochs. You don't need a character running around witnessing the end of the dinosaurs, or you don't need a character's perspective. Lore and world building, they're perfectly legit narrative forms of their own. And I think that's one exciting thing we are discovering in this day and age of speculative evolution slowly creeping into the popular mainstream. If you have characters, they mess everything up. Character-driven fiction is another thing. And it stands closer to those archetypical legends. I mean, Star Wars is all about daddy issues. But people have had daddy issues for centuries and will continue to do so. Whereas something like Man After Man or All Tomorrows. It's about the progression of a species. I mean, you also approach psychological stereotypes and archetypes there, but in a different way. So I think character-driven fiction and speculative, sweeping narratives should stand apart. How would I manage a sci-fi graphic novel? I don't know. I'm really bad with sequential art. I would just design the animals, outline a broad plot, and then hire an author who's far more talented than myself and let them figure it out. Chill Beats asks, what is your favorite animal? I answered this question before, but I have got many favorite animals. For example, why not Gymnura, the butterfly ray? So it's a ray fish that's really wide. It's like a bat. It's got the tiniest tail, but its wings are like as long as a door, and it flaps about in the ocean bottom. It's a great creature. What Broccoli Jr. asks, what did the first land creature on Snaiad look like? I'm talking about before life was reset to pond scum. Good question. I just don't know yet. Titan Lizard, a longtime friend, asks, what would your Godzilla story and its creatures be like? I mean, I don't know. Oh, that's a long... So I really like the Shin Godzilla film, and it was directed by Hideko Anno, who was also the mind behind Neon Genesis Evangelion. So it was a really good film about human reaction and basically official ineptitude in the face of a disaster. So it was really a good film in that respect. I don't know how my Godzilla story would be like. I think I would redo Destroy All Monsters, in which you got these entire gang of Godzilla-like creatures and they all like fight one super evil creature. But I think it would be more like a Walking with Dinosaurs set in the center of the earth, the hollow earth, where it's full of dead cities left over by a ruined civilization. So they all live among those dead cities and occasionally fight and, crash onto buildings. That's the reason I have the dead cities in the first place. And just follow their lives, that's all. Bomberman66 Hell. How do you feel about the sudden surge in popularity you have received? Do you personally feel like you are deserving of it? I'm really happy about it. I got 22,000 subscribers on YouTube now. But of course, always remember that 22,000 is the size of a small town. There are millions out there who don't know anything about me. So, I always use that metric to never get ahead of myself. But at the moment, my wife and I are really happy. Every day there's a cool All Tomorrows fan video or some fan tribute. Like just recently, this user made a songified version of my funny rants from a previous podcast video where I talk about biomes, and it was really fun. So those things, thank you. It makes me feel good. Also, if you want to take any of my sound bites or weird songs and songify them, go for it. I really appreciate it. My name is Ozymandias asks, did you play the graphic adventure Riven? If yes, what do you think about the fictional wildlife featured in it? Designed by Richard van der Wende. I did not play Riven, but I remember the creatures in it. There were like these six-finned flamingo pterosaur-like creatures, and they were really well designed. Heck, everything and anything in that game was really well designed. So I think the life forms were really nice. I also looked up Richard van der Wende's work. Some of his creatures, they're a bit like those extremely distorted Mad Magazine cartoons with like these bulging eyes and hook noses. So I don't like them. But some of them, like there are these concept drawing seeded or painting seeded for these prospective George Lucas films, I think. These like dog-like animals with big lips and like meaty wattles. I think those are really great. I think on the overall, he's a really nice designer. Friendly Garial, Friendly Gravital, wow, with a Gravital avatar, asks, thanks by the way, what is your favorite anime? At the moment it's Haikyuu. Don't mind. And if you go to my anime net and find me there as CM Kozaman, you can see all my favorite animes. Renew Infinity Train, this is the best kind of comment, asks, how are you? I'm fine, thank you, my friend. Folidia, not a question, but I want to say I never knew how interesting I found this kind of stuff until I found you through All Tomorrows. Thank you. Come to Istanbul one day and I'll buy you a beer or coffee. Please continue what you're doing. Sebastian PD asks, what are some of your personal favorite speculative evolution projects? I answered this in the previous video. Dr. Norman asks, what do you consider is your best book? Funnily enough, it's not none of the speculative zoology stuff. Not even All Tomorrows, not even All Yesterdays, not even Snayat. Currently, my favorite book is the book I have about Istanbul's vernacular architecture and hand-painted apartment signs. I think its value is going to be understood more in the future. So for 10 years, I walked through every street in Istanbul, I kid you not, at least in the historical central parts of Istanbul. And I photographed like Istanbul apartments, the old ones, have these really elegant hand-painted calligraphic signs, and all the apartments have names. So it's like Sea Apartment or Flower Apartment or Apartment of Murat Bey or something. And all of these are rendered very nicely with eclectic brush strokes. I photographed 6,000 such signs. On top of that, I photographed nearly 5,000 unbelievable eclectic details, like a balcony through which a tree is growing, something like that. So I photographed wrought iron doors, windows, strange facades, corner houses, spite houses, the lot. So I edited them all, and it took me another year to do this. And then this book has like 1,400 pages in 2 volumes, all of them full of color photographs. It was a mad task, and this is my proudest book. I'm really more proud about my history and visual research books at the moment. But when I complete All Tomorrows, the real book, and Snayat, the real book, they might give the history books some competition in my headspace. Dana Mar asks, hi Siam, I would really love you to explore the natural history of 2 projects. The Mystery Flesh Pit National Park world building, and B, the world of Serena. Cheers, Dana. Thanks, Dana. I spoke about Serena. I think the project speaks more about itself than anything I can say. The artist behind Serena is far more talented than I am in terms of creativity, art, and zoological aptitude. And the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park, okay, I've seen things about it. I haven't read too much into it. But it sounds a bit like those Stranger Things wannabe, like 80s megacorp, but there's also it's a bit of like Simon Stalenhag thrown in, like these weird things happening. And I mean, it's interesting, but just not it doesn't really push my buttons 100%. But thanks, Dana. Xenomorph Özkan says, you inspired me. Thank you, Gardash. You inspire me too. You and all my fans. Invictus asks, what's your favorite anime? Go to my animelist.net or .com. Okay. Maloik asks, what are some of your favorite organisms? I answered this. And what are your thoughts on the fungus that lives off the radiation in Chernobyl? How might other organisms evolve in environments that exist solely off of mutagens? Okay, so he's talking about this kind of radioactive decay organism. Olaf Stapledon, the amazing author who wrote like the books about future human evolution. He has books called what was it called? Last and First Man and Star Maker. Now these two books make all tomorrows sound like a piece of spit. These are the real books you have to read about future evolution. I kid you not. In one of those books, there are these Venusian creatures who exist from energy derived from the decay of radioactive isotopes. I don't know. I mean, to have that, you will have to have an extreme concentration of decaying radioactive isotopes. And even then, I mean, we're talking about millions of years. So, and maybe something like lichen develops and tardigrade like things or mite like animals. But I don't know. It would be very boring, I think. It would be like pond scum or like microfilm bacteria or lichens and mites walking among them. I don't think it would give rise to extremely large animals. That's what I'm saying. And that kind of environment in itself might completely be infeasible. Like, it may not exist anywhere in the universe. Unless you're looking at extremely exotic places like the surface of a neutron star or something. But then the whole discussion becomes academic. Cliff Tunney asks, which one of your many projects took you the most time? Which one made me the happiest? It was the sign painting book I just told you about. But I think SNIAD is going to be the biggest project so far. Considering your rich educational history from Istanbul to New York and London universities, yes, I was lucky. May I ask, was it hard for you? Was the educational process full of odds and obstacles, or did it go rather smoothly for you? Okay, so for those who don't know, I started studying in Cornell University, which was an Ivy League college. But you know what? Halfway through my first year, I grew homesick, and I just effed all my classes. And then in my second year, I transferred to a Turkish university, which was one of the best in the country, and I graduated from there. For a long time, I regretted this, but then again, you know, I have done everything I have dreamed of back in my college years. Like, All Tomorrows was shaping up, and now it's out as a book, so I don't have many regrets. It was hard for me because in the beginning, my parents took care of my every need when I was a teenager. So it was a real shock to adapt to this kind of like by your bootstraps American culture. But personally, I didn't have any trouble. I mean, I made friends, made more than friends. So it was nice. But I always find that Turkey was better. I mean, first because my family was there. But then, and simple things like the food, like you could have a haircut for $1. Medicare doesn't cost a thing. And it's full of these bizarre, beautiful historic places, creatures. I could always visit London and New York as a tourist. I don't have to live out, let's say, somebody else's inferiority complex. Like, there's this thing in the country where I'm from. If you live in London, if you live in New York, you're a higher sort of being, as if your flesh is of a different substance. So many wealthy people go there, and where they have perfectly asinine, uneventful, boring, and insular lives, and I think it's a fate worse than prison. I mean, if I go to the States or Europe, it would be for one of two reasons, or three reasons. First, maybe why my wife gets a job there, and of course, I'll go along with her. Second, if there's some sort of, oh my God, do you hear this? It's the sound of inevitability, Mr. Anderson. It's the sound of my alarm, which tells me that the jig is up. 1 hour is up, and I have to do other things with my day. So I'm going to finish answering this question, then we'll take over the next time. Okay, what was I saying? I live in a foreign country under three circumstances. One, if my wife gets a job there, of course I'll be there to support her. She's the totem pole that holds up the roof over my head. So, of course. Second is if there's a Syria or Bosnia and Herzegovina kind of war where I live, and of course then we'll have to run. But let me tell you, this is never going to happen with Turkey. I mean, there's a lot of pessimism about, you can't live in this country anymore. Well, 90% of the problems are shared in other countries. So this is just not the way I think. Politics is bad. It's as if politics is great everywhere else. And there's this aspect of it, this thing. Okay, like, I've been lucky. I'm a guy who creates future humans, alien reptiles and amphibians, parallel evolutionary lines of pterosaurs. Now, would it be better for the entire world if this person lived in the mist-shrouded streets of Scutari, or in the valleys of the bygone Phrygian Empire, or in the sun-soaked coasts of Ionia, or near the site of the crucial Battle of Manzikert? Or if this person lived in Fresno or Toronto? I know the answer. This is a part of the world. It's not perfect, but it's a world of consequence. When you achieve something here, you really feel like you achieved it. And of course, there's a third reason. If by some miracle, some publisher or some movie making company offers me enough to make a decent living for the rest of my mortal life in that country, of course I'll pack up and go. But none of these seem to be in the books now. Stick around, don't be a punk, be part of something. Okay, with that we answered this question. And I got a lot more college stories, education stories. Maybe I'll do an entire podcast about them sometime else. But that was that for today. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, but don't ask any more questions. I still have hundreds more to go. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to finish this thing. And as always, consider donating to me on patreon.com. And I love you all and have a good day. Bye.